My childhood friend, who had been fostered in my home since he was little, was selected this year by Beckley International to study abroad. But his first love had spiked his drink, seduced him while he was under the influence, and caused him to miss the opportunity. As a result, he gave up on going abroad and chose to stay behind. I couldn't bear to watch everyone's hopes for him fall apart, so I told my parents the truth. They were enraged and reported it to the police. His first love was arrested. Unable to endure the public judgment, she hanged herself. Years later, that same childhood friend, now wildly successful and famous, blamed me for it all. He took revenge on my entire family, leading to our tragic deaths. Now that I've been reborn, I simply watch as he spirals downward, doing nothing to intervene. I witnessed his rivals rise with the tide of the times, their futures gleaming. Outside the factory gates, Ryan Walker strode past proudly, wearing a commendation ribbon, basking in his success. "Ryan Walker is so handsome," someone gushed. "You grew up with him, didn't you? You really lucked out," they added with a sly wink. In my previous life, I too foolishly believed that Ryan and I were fated to be together. On my 18th birthday, I gathered all my courage to ask him to take a photo with me for memory's sake, but he impatiently refused. My parents scolded me for being immature, for disrupting his preparations for the overseas interview. But that night, on a whim, I decided to bring him a late-night snack. When I arrived at the dorm, I saw him holding hands with Lauren Chen, the two of them writing sweet promises together on imported photo paper. "When Ryan gets back from studying abroad, you'll become a rich wife," joked Lily Young, snapping me out of my memories. A rich wife? As the daughter of the county academic director, I had never worried about money or lived vainly. But I didn't want Ryan's years of hard study to go to waste. So, even though I never believed in fate, I still went to the temple and prayed for a protective charm. On the morning of his interview, I wanted to bring some good luck. At the crack of dawn, I went out to buy a large celebration cake. Cheerfully carrying it home, I spotted something strange near the bicycle rack. Lauren Chen, whispering suspiciously with a man. "Does the drug really work?" she asked. "Don't worry, sis. Everyone in my hometown uses this stuff. No matter how strong their will is, once they drink it, they'll give in," the man replied confidently. My face burned as I eavesdropped. At first, I thought Lauren was drugging an animal or something, but then I heard her say, "I don't care if it ruins him. As long as he misses tomorrow's interview, I'm good." "Exactly," the man laughed. "Once he's out of the country, he'll forget about anyone back home." He glanced toward our house with a greedy expression. "If you marry into the Walker family, I'll be able to enjoy the good life too. That house must be worth a fortune. Sis, when you marry Ryan, can our family move in too?" "Of course," Lauren said smugly. "Just wait for my good news." They were plotting to ruin Ryan's future. I couldn't bear to see him sabotaged like that, so I rushed home and told him everything I had overheard. I hoped he'd wake up and avoid falling into Lauren's trap. But Ryan accused me of being jealous of Lauren, of stooping to filthy tactics to ruin her reputation. Left with no other option, I turned to my parents for help. They were furious and immediately called the police. The authorities arrived and found the drugs on Lauren, arresting her on the spot. Ryan remained silent throughout. The next day, he still passed the interview and went abroad as planned. 3 years later, he returned with honors and established the first joint venture company in the entire county, becoming the youngest self-made billionaire. My parents were proud and comforted, believing that all their efforts hadn't been in vain. But in that same year, Ryan colluded with gangsters under the guise of cracking down on monopolies and smashed my father's school, leaving our family homeless. In the end, in an abandoned warehouse on a stormy night, he grabbed me by the throat and sneered, "Emma Lynn, you're the reason Lauren killed herself. You and your whole family should pay for her death. You deserve to starve in the streets." After he violated me, he still wasn't satisfied and ordered someone to break my limbs with an iron rod. Now that I've been given a second chance at life, I will no longer interfere with the fate of this ungrateful man. After Ryan's parents abandoned him, they never came back. He grew up alone in the countryside, struggling with hunger and hardship, but he was always gifted. By the age of 5, he could recite the entire Xinhua dictionary. When he started school, my father, remembering his past friendship with Ryan's family, feared his genius would be wasted in such poor conditions. He personally arranged for someone to bring Ryan from the village to the county and treated him like his own son. We had enrolled Ryan in the best prep school in the entire county. Everything he wore, ate, and used was carefully chosen. After winning first place in several provincial and national competitions, all he needed was this final opportunity to study abroad to completely change his fate. But I had already made up my mind. I would let Ryan Walker walk the path he chose. I would no longer meddle, not even a step. On the day of the interview, my father had the driver polish the car until it gleamed. He waited in the courtyard, brimming with joy. Not long after, my mother came running over in a panic. "Matthew, something's wrong. Ryan, he's gone." My father thought he had misheard. "What do you mean, gone?" "I've searched the entire house," she cried. "The bathroom, the rooftop. I looked everywhere, but there's no sign of him." My father's face went pale, and he staggered. I quickly stepped forward to steady him. "Dad, don't panic," I said. "Maybe he already left early to check in at the factory." He patted my hand and nodded. "Emma, you may be right. All right, John, take a few colleagues and search the neighborhood thoroughly. Lily, take the motorcycle and check all the places Ryan usually hangs out. Visit his friends' houses too. Quick, go." They searched until the foreign guest who came for the interview had already left. Finally, the driver quietly whispered something in my father's ear. "What did you say?" my father asked, stunned. "You saw it with your own eyes?" The driver nodded miserably. "It's true, Mr. Lin." My father's face turned cold as steel. He led a few men to the spot the driver mentioned, and there they found Lauren Chen cradled in Ryan's arms. My father was so furious that he slapped Ryan across the face. Ryan quickly shielded Lauren behind him, his expression full of defiance. "Uncle Lin, I was drunk. I took advantage of Lauren. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Don't drag her into this." "Don't talk nonsense," my father roared. "So you were drunk and not thinking straight, but this factory worker was sober the entire time. Why didn't she scream or resist? Why did she just stand by and watch you miss your interview and throw your future away? Ryan, you've been deceived." Lauren bit her lip hard and didn't say a word, but she looked as if she were the most aggrieved person in the world. Ryan looked at her with deep sympathy. A girl's reputation is more important than anything. She didn't dare speak out. It was already too late. How could she call for help? She was only thinking of preserving her dignity. "Do you know what it means to miss the interview without any explanation?" my father demanded. "You're deceiving the leadership. That's a major offense." Ryan had always been clever. How could he not understand the consequences? "I missed the interview. That's my fault. I'll take full responsibility. Don't blame Uncle Lin." My father, who had been holding on all this time, finally collapsed from the shock. I rushed to catch him, and the driver and I brought him back home immediately. As I was helping my father, Ryan suddenly called out to me, guilt in his eyes. "Emma, I know you've had feelings for me since we were little, but my heart belongs to Lauren. There's no room for anyone else. I'm sorry." I gave him a faint smile. "You're joking, Ryan. Some people are ambitious but hollow inside. When two of the same kind meet, it's only natural they're drawn to each other." Ryan's face darkened instantly. Lauren looked like she wanted to explode, but didn't dare. In the past, I was naive. I didn't understand that love also had to be grounded in compatibility. In my previous life, I'd often wondered why Ryan was so obsessed with someone like Lauren, who was low-born and worthless. Now I finally understood. Ryan came from the countryside, with humble roots and a restless desire to rise above. That made him exactly like Lauren. Compared to someone like me, who only knew how to care from afar without truly relating to his struggles, of course, the two of them were more in sync. Knowing things wouldn't end well, I had already asked a doctor from the county hospital to stay on standby at our house. Now, that preparation proved useful. "Thank goodness Miss Lin had the foresight to ask me to be here," the doctor said. "Otherwise, your father might not have made it." I stood silently by my father's bedside, head bowed. There was no such thing as foresight. I had simply come to see Ryan's true colors. My mother held my hand, tears streaming as she looked at my unconscious father. When he finally woke up, Ryan returned after being missing for a long time, not to apologize, but to say, "Uncle Lin, I beg you to let me marry Lauren." My father thought he had misheard and asked him several times, "You want to marry her?" "You heard right," Ryan replied firmly. "I, Ryan Walker, swear I will marry no one but Lauren Chen." My mother wiped her tears, trembling with anger. "Have you lost your mind?" My mother shouted, her voice trembling with disbelief. With a loud thud, Lauren Chen dropped to her knees in front of my mother, her eyes brimming with tears. "I already belong to Ryan," she sobbed. "If I can't marry him, I'd rather die." Every word she said painted herself as the victim, emphasizing how Ryan had promised to marry her properly. She skillfully shifted all the blame onto him, insisting that it was Ryan who had ruined her innocence and that she had done nothing wrong. My mother, disgusted, snapped, "How dare someone so shameless put on this act?" She turned to our housekeeper. "John, go call the police and have her taken away." When Ryan heard that, he clung tightly to Lauren and shouted at my mother, "Aunt Linda, you've never treated me like family. If I were your biological son, would you treat the woman I love like this?" It was absurd. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that. Compared to me, his foster sister, Ryan had always been treated more like family. Ever since he moved in with us, my mother made sure the kitchen prepared his meals separately, with extra care. Seasonal fruits might not reach me every day, but Ryan's portion was never missing. If he caught a cold, my father would take time off work just to stay by his bedside. My father doted on him endlessly. Over the years, he never had to do any chores. Everything he wore, ate, or used was ready-made and well provided. He lived more comfortably than I, the actual daughter of the family. And yet, in the end, he repaid that kindness with betrayal. If that's not being an ungrateful traitor, then what is? My mother nearly fainted from anger. I gently tugged on her sleeve and softly said, "Mom, let it go. The interview is already over. Even if you arrest him now, there's no way Ryan can get that opportunity back." Then, as if stabbing Ryan quietly in the heart, I added, "Besides, you and Dad are only his foster parents. You can control him for a while, but not for a lifetime. Why not just let them go? Let him move out with Lauren." As soon as I said that, Lauren panicked. "Miss Lin, you're jealous of me, and you want me out, that's fine. But Ryan grew up with you. No matter how angry you are, you shouldn't kick him out too." Her words seemed to defend Ryan, but deep down, she was afraid of the hardship that would come from living outside our home. My father also disagreed. He had invested so much in raising Ryan. How could he stand by and watch his future slip into darkness? Propping himself up on the bed with great effort, he looked earnestly at Ryan. "Have you thought about this carefully? If you want to succeed in society and establish yourself, you'll need a well-educated wife to help you manage your relationships. But that girl..." He cast a dismissive glance at Lauren. "Her entire family are idle street dwellers. Not only will she not help you, she'll drag you down." Ryan's eyes flickered. He was clearly wavering. But when he saw Lauren crying uncontrollably, he clenched his jaw and said stubbornly, "I don't care about any of that." My father finally sighed, clenching his fists. "Fine, then, I'll let you go through with it." "How can you be so foolish?" my mother cried after Ryan left, stomping her foot in frustration. "Letting him ruin his life like this." I handed my father a cup of warm water and tried to calm her. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm sure Dad has his own plan." My father patted my hand with a look of comfort. "Only you understand me, Emma." He believed that people only grow up after experiencing hardship. Since Ryan was determined to go his own way, then he would have to face life's difficulties and learn from them. One day, he would wake up. When Ryan and Lauren moved out, I personally handed Lauren her employment file from the factory. "From this day forward, you are no longer part of this company," I told her coldly. "You also have nothing more to do with the Lin family. From now on, your marriage and your life will depend solely on your own choices and efforts." Lauren took the file and flipped through it several times. With her limited education, I couldn't tell what she was looking for. So I asked, "What are you trying to find?" "As for Ryan's salary," I added, "I've already instructed the accountant to pay it in full. All the clothes we gave him have also been packed for him to take." I couldn't think of anything I still owed him. Suddenly, Lauren Chen glared at me, her tone bitter and resentful. Ryan grew up in your home. Now that he's starting a family and building his future, shouldn't Dean Lin offer some support? That's when it hit me. They were blaming my parents for not giving them money for a house. Standing next to her, Ryan remained silent, but the dissatisfaction in his eyes said it all. It was obvious he felt the same way. Ha! What a pair of ungrateful ingrates. Our marriage law clearly states that children are obligated to support their parents. Being a child means showing respect. If you don't, you'll be held legally accountable, I said, looking straight at Ryan. Am I wrong? He frowned impatiently. So what? What are you trying to say? I gave a faint smile. Since you know the law, can you point out which article says foster parents are required to buy their foster child a house, arrange his wedding, and support him for the rest of his life? What are you treating my parents as? A personal ATM? My words landed like a sharp slap. Ryan's face turned red, then pale, clearly humiliated. Lauren huffed. You saw he was smart, so you dragged him from the countryside to the city. Since you brought him here, shouldn't you be responsible to the end? So that's what they thought. My parents didn't adopt Ryan. They simply brought him to the county for school, gave him a place to live, and supported his studies and daily life. It wasn't some lifelong contract. If he wanted, he could return to the countryside at any time. His long-lost biological parents had defied their family's warnings, secretly eloped after an unplanned pregnancy, and vanished without a trace, leaving behind aging parents who never heard from them again. Ryan truly was their son. He learned to be ungrateful at a young age. Lauren turned to Ryan and said, "Stop groveling to them. As long as I'm alive, I'll make something of myself one day." Is that so? I said coolly. Then let me wish you success in advance. Just know, without our support, Ryan might struggle to even cover basic living expenses. I didn't expect that barely half a month later, a strange man would come knocking at our door. He looked ragged, filthy hair, worn shoes. Clearly the type who belonged to the very bottom of society. His beady eyes scanned our courtyard greedily. The driver blocked his way, refusing to let him in. So the man squatted at our gate and wailed loudly, "This is where my relatives live. Who gave you the right to keep me out?" People walking by stopped to look. This is outrageous. Dean Lin raised a child who ruined my sister's reputation, and now he won't even let me through the door? My beautiful young sister was tricked and heartbroken by their family. His shameless scene quickly attracted a crowd. The moment I saw him, I recognized him as Lauren's lazy, jobless brother. If we let someone like him in, he'd surely spread lies everywhere, ruining our family's reputation. I stood firm and blocked the door. My father has always been a man of integrity. We have nothing to hide from the public. Let's talk this through right here, in front of everyone. Let them judge who's right and who's wrong. As soon as I finished speaking, people around us began nodding. Miss Lin is right. Dean Lin has always had a good reputation in the county. He's a fair man. Let's hear it out right here. Lauren's brother, whose name was Patrick Chen, narrowed his eyes and gave me a sinister glare. Fine. Then let's lay it all out in the open. Don't regret this, Miss Lin. In the past, he began loudly, my brother-in-law had his own parents, but that sly old fox Lin Guoqiang saw how clever he was and decided he had potential. So he snatched him away from his real family. Not only did they separate him from his birth parents for over a decade, but the Lin family constantly abused him, ordering him around like a servant. And now, just because he missed one chance to go abroad, they heartlessly kicked him out. Is that how you repay kindness? Use someone up and throw them away? The surrounding crowd gasped in shock. Who would have thought Dean Lin was like that behind the scenes? I remained calm and replied, "First of all, Ryan really was born in the countryside. You can ask him yourself." Ryan nodded reluctantly. Patrick burst out laughing, clearly proud of having forced that admission. Someone in the crowd let out a sigh of sympathy the moment they heard the word countryside. Life in rural areas is just too tough, someone said. Even sending kids to school is a struggle. I followed their lead and continued calmly. That's right. Everyone knows how harsh conditions are in rural areas and how lacking the education system is. My father saw that Ryan had exceptional intelligence and didn't want his talent to go to waste. That's why he brought him to the county, to give him a better learning environment and access to proper education. As for abuse, I shook my head. That's absolutely untrue. You can ask any of our neighbors or factory workers. None of them would say we ever mistreated him. Patrick Chen grew agitated. Of course your people will take your side. Just then, a neatly dressed young man stepped out from the crowd. I'm Zhao Carson, a coworker of Ryan's at the factory. I can vouch for Miss Lin. Ryan always wore brand-name clothes. His skin was fair and delicate, not even a hint of mistreatment. Clearly, Patrick's just spreading slander and trying to stir up trouble for Dean Lin. I nodded at him with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Zhou, for speaking the truth. Patrick tried to argue again. Fine, maybe you didn't abuse him, but now that he's starting a family, isn't it your duty to buy them a house? Give my sister a place to live? Absolutely not, I replied firmly. Ryan chose to give up a government-sponsored opportunity to study abroad just to stay with your sister. He swore he was a man who could support his wife on his own. If he wants to be self-reliant and prove his strength, wouldn't it destroy his pride if my parents kept handing him money? When the crowd heard that Ryan had passed on a national interview opportunity just for Lauren, they were stunned. A man with glasses in the crowd sneered. I thought maybe he missed the interview for some urgent reason. Turns out it was for a woman. Do you know how many of us fought tooth and nail for a chance to study abroad, and he just threw it away? What a waste of the country's resources, and Dean Lin's decade of effort. Absolutely ungrateful. Someone like him has the nerve to beg for money to buy a house? What shamelessness, and to think I work in the same factory as him. I'm embarrassed. His words struck a chord. The crowd erupted in applause. Well said. We can't stand people who bite the hand that feeds them. Seeing things turn against him, Patrick had already slipped away quietly. Once the crowd dispersed, I turned to Zhao Carson and said sincerely, Thank you so much for standing up and speaking out. He waved it off with a smile. No need for thanks, I just can't stand seeing good people get bullied. Besides, you handled it so calmly and logically under pressure. Miss Lin, you're incredibly talented. I'm not talented, I said gently. I've just survived something life-altering. I'm no longer as timid and hesitant as I used to be. Then I'd say that's a strength, Joe said. Managing a household well isn't any easier than working in the outside world. I wasn't fishing for compliments, I had just spoken what was in my heart. At the factory gate, Zhao stood for a moment, looking at me thoughtfully, his eyes bright. Soon it was the day to officially post the study abroad admission list. Since Ryan hadn't taken the interview, our family had no reason to go check. The list was posted at the factory's administrative building for public display only. There was no point for us to join the crowd. But Lily Wong insisted on dragging me out. Who cares about the list? I just want to check out the cute guys at the factory. The Golden Mall was right across from the administration building. Lily and I sat at a small cafe on the second floor, ordered 2 milk teas and a few pastries, and quietly watched the bustling crowd below. This year's selection is intense, Lily whispered. The 2 top technicians from the factory competed for the 1 slot. Everyone's dying to see who made it. Then she lowered her voice. They probably don't even know Ryan missed the interview. Poor guy. Only the factory executives knew the truth. The rest of the workers were still in the dark. Just as she finished her sentence, Lily nudged me with her elbow. Look who it is. Across the street, Ryan was walking with Lauren. She carried a grocery basket. They must have come out to shop and happened to pass by the factory entrance, where a crowd had gathered. Ryan's face darkened as he picked up his pace, clearly wanting to slip away unnoticed. Isn't that technician Ryan? Someone called out. They're about to announce the results. You're just in time. Ryan was just about to turn down the offer when a commotion suddenly broke out in the crowd gathered near the announcement board. The study abroad placement for spring of '84 goes to Zhou Carson. A factory worker froze in surprise and glanced awkwardly at Ryan, whose eyes were already cold and stormy. The worker muttered under his breath, Why not technician Ryan? No wonder Ryan looked so grim. He and Joe Carson had always worked in the same technical department. They never got along, constantly butting heads at work, competing fiercely over titles like outstanding employee. For Ryan, it might have been bearable if anyone else had won, but for Joe to be chosen? That was a crushing blow. It haunted him day and night, eating away at him. Ryan shook off the person trying to comfort him and turned to leave. In that instant, the sorrow and pain in his eyes were impossible to miss. Lauren stepped up just in time to catch the sight of his crushed expression. Lily nudged me excitedly. "Quick, look, it's about to get dramatic." We watched as Lauren looked up at Ryan with teary eyes, her voice trembling. "Ryan, are you blaming me?" His fists clenched at his sides. He held back, swallowed his anger, and in the end gently tucked a wind-blown strand of her hair behind her ear. "Of course not. Even if I don't go abroad, it doesn't mean I can't succeed. My future won't be any worse than theirs." Lily gasped. "Wow, so that actually works on him." I didn't care what worked on Ryan. What worried me was the fact that he had missed the national interview without giving a reason. Up until now, the factory leadership hadn't held him accountable simply because they were busy finalizing the selection. But now that the list was public, I feared our family might get caught in the fallout. I rushed home to tell my father everything. He gave a cold snort. If the factory leadership wanted to assign blame, they wouldn't have waited until today. Joe Carson must have spoken on our behalf. The leaders understand that Ryan made the mistake, and we're just the ones who got caught in the mess. That's the only reason they let it go. My father had always acted with integrity, and with Joe putting in a good word, the issue was brushed aside. But Ryan, my father sighed. Such a waste. I'm afraid he's lost his future prospects for good. After all the factory invested in him, in the end, they merely revoked his promotion eligibility. That's a light punishment. But a man only gets so many 10-year chances in life. Starting over from scratch, it's not easy. I didn't have much time to dwell on that because not long after, Joe Carson's mother came to our home with a marriage proposal. My mother asked me for my thoughts. "I was wrong," she said gently. "I always thought you'd end up with Ryan, so I never seriously considered your future. I should have asked you earlier." She patted my hand with a smile. My parents believed Joe was a good match. Honest background, stable character, and now, an opportunity to study abroad. Many girls in the factory had a crush on him, but he had never shown interest in any of them. He was loyal and dependable. When she mentioned Ryan again, my mother's face filled with worry. I put down the half-knitted sweater in my hands. "I like Mr. Zhao too. He's open-minded and thoughtful. He respects my opinions and treats me as an equal. That's hard to find nowadays." No dowry was requested. The wedding date was set quickly. On the big day, drums beat and firecrackers rang out. I wore a red bridal hat as I stepped into the wedding car. Just as the engine started, a long, slender, calloused hand reached in through the window. "Sweetheart, have something sweet first," Zhao said, handing me a piece of chocolate. I took it and bit gently into it. The sweetness melted in my mouth, but the car hadn't gone far when it came to an abrupt stop. Outside, voices were rising in a heated argument. I pulled the curtain aside, just enough to peek through. Across the street, a rickety bicycle was pulling a shabby wedding palanquin. They were blocking the road right in front of us, refusing to yield. When I looked at Ryan again, I saw that although he wore a red groom's outfit, it was wrinkled and lifeless. In just a few short months, he had lost a considerable amount of weight, his complexion yellow and sickly. The wedding palanquin behind him was dilapidated, so shabby that even the curtain seams were patched. There wasn't a single piece of proper dowry in sight. If Ryan hadn't been wearing a groom's outfit, no one would have guessed this was a wedding at all. He seemed to sense someone watching him. Without hesitation, his gaze met mine directly. I quickly lowered the curtain and smoothed my hair. After I got married, Ryan secretly came to see me. "Emma, why did you marry Joe?" he asked. "You know I never got along with him. Why would you?" I didn't want to talk to him, so I replied dismissively, "Because he's a good man. That's enough." The fact that he and Joe weren't on good terms worked in my favor. It meant I wouldn't have to see Ryan often after marriage. "You're really going to make such a major life decision that casually?" he pressed. "Tell me the truth. Do you still have feelings for me? Are you marrying him just to get back at me and Lauren?" How shameless, I nearly gagged. When I stared back at him without saying a word, he actually said, "Emma, I regret it. I thought missing the study abroad opportunity wasn't a big deal." There are plenty of technicians at the factory who never went abroad and still became key personnel. I curled my lips into a cold smile, eyes full of mockery. He had always thought too highly of himself, as if the whole world owed him a smooth path. Why should everything and everyone revolve around him? The Chen household was a complete mess. Their home was so small you could barely turn around in it, and when it rained, the roof leaked. The technical manuals I had brought back from abroad were completely soaked. The next morning, I wanted to salvage them by laying them out to dry, but when I got up, I saw Patrick Chen had already sold them as scrap paper to the recycling station. Listening to Ryan complain, I found it both ridiculous and pitiful. Those manuals had once meant everything to him. He wouldn't even let me touch them. And now, sold as trash by an illiterate thug like Patrick. But what could he do? He had chosen Lauren and her family himself. But I regret it, he said again. Emma, you knew I was making a mistake. Why didn't you stop me? If you had stopped me back then, I would have gone abroad. I would have come back and gotten promoted. I would have married you. How absurd. In my past life, hadn't I stopped him, and all it got me was betrayal and the destruction of my family. He just didn't want to be seen as the heartless one. He wanted me to bear the blame so he could walk away with success in both career and love. What a selfish plan. But now I understood. Good intentions can cause harm. People must live with the consequences of their own choices. Sympathy is wasted on those who don't deserve it. I pushed him away. Ryan, you're wrong. Whether or not you marry Lauren has nothing to do with me, your success or failure, your wealth or poverty. It has nothing to do with the Lin family anymore. When I returned home to visit after the wedding, my parents greeted me with joyful expressions. But beneath their smiles was an unspoken sadness. With Joe present, I didn't ask anything. I waited until my mother took me to see our new house and used the chance to ask her quietly. She told me that after realizing the technical manuals were valuable, Patrick didn't sell them as scrap. Instead, he sold them all in one batch to a private factory he knew for a cheap price. The money he made, he didn't use it to fix the house or buy food, not even to get work supplies for Ryan. He gambled it all away. When Ryan went to ask for the money, Patrick not only refused to give it back, but also called him a useless bum, saying he couldn't earn a cent, but sure knew how to eat like a pig. Honestly, he wasn't wrong. Other than being good at studying, Ryan didn't have any practical skills. But verbal abuse wasn't enough for them. They even beat him up. Lauren was just as heartless. She stood by and watched her brother beat Ryan so badly that his face was permanently disfigured. At this point, my mother's eyes turned red. Our factory regulations are strict. Anyone with visible facial scars isn't allowed to work on the export production line. That means, even if the requirements are relaxed 10 years from now, Ryan won't be young anymore. I gently patted her blanket and comforted her. So what if he can't work in exports? As long as he's willing to work steadily with his knowledge, he can still support himself as a technician or an engineer. The moment I said that, my mother immediately caught the deeper meaning behind my words. Emma, she began hesitantly. Are you saying? I'll say it again, I told her calmly. He's not your biological son. You never truly know what's in another person's heart. When everything went his way, he was already ungrateful. Now he's even less worth hoping for. That was the moment my parents finally saw Ryan for what he really was. A heartless ingrate, and resolved to cut ties with him completely. But 3 months later, Ryan showed up at our doorstep, kneeling alongside Lauren, who was looking radiant and graceful. Only my mother was home at the time. I was worried she wouldn't be able to handle the situation alone, so the moment I got the call, Joe Carson and I rushed back. It had only been a few months, yet Ryan now bore a deep scar that ran from the corner of his brow all the way down to his chin. It completely ruined the sharp features he once prided himself on. His once black hair had turned streaked with gray. The way he knelt there hunched over, it was hard to believe he was only in his early 20s. When he saw Joe gently helping me out of the car, Ryan's eyes filled with jealousy and resentment. Before getting married, he had been superior to Joe in every way. And now, just a few months later, Joe had returned from studying abroad, his future full of promise, while Ryan couldn't even afford a clean set of clothes. Someone as proud and self-important as Ryan. How could he not hate? Emma, please, he begged, talk to Mr. Lin for me. Let Lauren and me come back and live at home. If he hadn't been so strict with me back then, I wouldn't have rebelled and done something so foolish. I swear I'll never talk back to him again. I'll listen to everything he says. Even now, he couldn't admit he was truly wrong. His words were just another way of saying my father had interfered too much. Then Lauren spoke up, her face pale and waxy. Emma, let's let bygones be bygones. We're family now. The baby I'm carrying will one day call you Auntie. So now she wanted to claim kinship? But I had no desire to acknowledge her. I said nothing. She pressed on shamelessly. Even if Ryan can't go abroad now, our child will inherit his dreams. Someday they'll attend a top university and bring honor to the Lin family. Wow. So now our family was supposed to sponsor their kids' education too? I replied coolly. We used to just be co-workers at the factory. Even that no longer applies, so please just call me Miss Lin. And as for you, Ryan, I added, you once said everyone in our family was cold and heartless. That only Lauren accepted you for who you were, cared for you sincerely, and even snuck you good food and supplies. But did you ever consider, how would a regular female worker like her get imported snacks and high-end items without my silent approval? At those words, the two of them, still kneeling at our doorstep, went stiff. Lauren's face went ghostly pale. She clearly hadn't expected me to have known about their secret relationship all along and never exposed it, not even on their wedding day. Now everything had changed, and yet I chose this moment to rip away the mask. Lauren's voice cracked in disbelief. How could you know? That's impossible. In my past life, even on my deathbed, I had never understood what Ryan saw in Lauren. She was plain, there were so many beautiful women at the factory, yet he had fixated on her. But after being reborn, I watched more carefully, and finally saw through it. Ryan turned and glared at Lauren viciously. Is it true, Lauren? What Emma said, is it true? No, it's not, she stammered. I bought those things myself, with money I saved up. But the panic in her eyes betrayed her lie. Ryan lost it. He slapped her hard across the face. You bitch! You ruined my whole life. If it weren't for you drugging me and seducing me, I wouldn't have missed my chance to go abroad. If it weren't for you, I'd already be a department chief by now. I wouldn't be living meal to meal, unable to afford a proper winter coat in this freezing weather. You ruined my future. You ruined my whole life. As he roared, Ryan lunged forward and wrapped his hands around Lauren's neck. His eyes burned with a frenzied madness that mirrored exactly how he had looked in my past life. When he turned violent toward me, there were too many people around. I stepped in. Ryan, this isn't the place. If you want to settle scores, take it home. But just as the words left my mouth, Lauren let out a piercing scream. Blood suddenly gushed from between her legs, soaking the ground in bright red. Ryan's face turned pale as a sheet. He quickly loosened his grip, panic overtaking his rage. Help, Emma, quick, bring her inside, call a doctor. Zhao, who had been standing silently at my side this whole time, finally spoke. Should we let them in? It was, admittedly, a life-or-death situation. But Lauren's condition hadn't been caused by us. It was Ryan's violence that triggered her early labor. If I softened and let them inside, and something happened to Lauren or the baby, Ryan would hold it over our heads for the rest of our lives. I shook my head. The pharmacy owner across the street also works as a midwife. Take her there. It'll be faster than waiting for a doctor to come here. But I had underestimated just how ugly human nature could be. Even as Lauren writhed in pain, Ryan continued to use her and the unborn baby to manipulate me. Lauren, hang on, he said loudly. If we can't even find a place decent enough for our child to be born, maybe we shouldn't have this baby at all. Then, looking straight at me, he added, Emma's too kind. She won't leave us to die, right? What were they doing all this time? Did they think of any of this when they chose to live in that drafty shack, barely fit for rats? Did they care then how they'd shelter a child from the wind and rain? Now, with the child already on its way, they had nothing, and dared to use that child to threaten me? Ryan, you've gone too far, and don't forget, Lauren's brother is a dangerous man. If something happens to her, you'll be the next to pay. That pretty face of yours won't last. With that, I grabbed Joe's arm and walked back into our home. No matter how Ryan begged, screamed, or pounded on the door, we never opened it again. 5 days later, we received news that Lauren had given birth to a daughter, and Ryan had hanged himself. My father didn't say a word when he heard. But in an instant, it was like he had aged 10 years. He sat in silence for a long while before asking the messenger, in a low and tired voice, "Did he leave any last words?" The messenger looked uncomfortable. "He did. The night before he died, he kept muttering nonsense. Said he had a dream, he went abroad, earned accolades, became the factory director. Kept saying that this life was fake. My parents didn't understand what that meant. They just assumed he had lost his mind before death. But I knew. I knew exactly what it meant. Ryan must have remembered everything from his past life. And when he woke to the crushing reality, how far he'd fallen from that dream, it was more than he could bear. He chose to end it. I don't know how many times a person can relive their life, but I'm certain of this. Someone as selfish, self-pitying, and entitled as Ryan, no matter how many second chances he gets, will never have a good ending. Joe came to take me home. Snowflakes began to drift from the sky. I reached out to catch one, but he gently took my hand and tucked it into his coat pocket to warm it. "You're going to be a mother now. Don't act like such a child, you'll catch a cold." I laughed and slipped my arm through his. "I'm not a child," I said softly. "I'm the mother of a child." Joe's eyes lit up. He lifted me off the ground in surprise. "Really? I'm going to be a father? Emma, you are the best gift heaven has ever given me." I smiled, resting against his chest. "You're my gift too. Reborn, with him and our baby and my loving parents by my side, this was the most precious gift life could offer me."